Parents can beat their kids, but God forbid let two girls like each other. Welcome back, everyone, to Bitch I Ain't Scared, a.k.a. FearBias. I'm Rob the Scholar, here with Nate the Fool. Nate, how are you today?
Nate the Fool. I am breathing, but it's so nice to hear your sultry voice.
Thank you. How are you feeling after that win? You still on cloud nine? Feeling all like I know my horror?
I feel, I feel pretty good. I just told someone about it. And I was like, yeah, I saved Maureen Evans, so.
I had thought about the trivia episode from 2 weeks ago, and I was thinking, yeah, you may have saved Maureen, but you also killed the entire world because everyone was supposed to die except for the virgin.
Okay, look, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, we didn't really discuss that.
No,
I guess no matter what, you lose.
Technically, that probably would have happened if I had said something. But yeah, no, I just thought that was funny. But we actually did get some positive feedback from it. Some people did say that it was a creative way to establish like trivia and just some like remembrance from the movie and just kind of relive it a little bit. Just through that. So yeah, I look forward to doing these again. I already have my movie picked out, by the way. So I just gotta study for it, and yeah, I'll be ready.
And I gotta come up with a lesson plan. Oh my gosh, syllabus.
Well,
right.
Speaking of trivia, let's get our trivia question out of the way. For episode 8, this is a trivia question back to you. What is the name of the haunted house in the film The Haunting from 1963?
I'll think about it.
Okay, you do that, sir. We will return back to this by the end of the episode. And this has already been posted. So for those of you who were present when this posted on Twitter and Instagram, post your answers. See if you get it right. We'll give you a shout out once we reveal the answer at the end.
Yes, indeed. Even if it's wrong.
All right, so this is going to be a very straightforward episode. We're going to veer off from the random tangent shenanigans and focus on something very specific. Ever since Independence Day weekend, July 2nd, there have been a trio of films that have been released on Netflix, one after the other. And it is the 3 films based off the best-selling books by R.L. Stine, Fear Street. One movie per week. An installment was released sharing the story of Shadyside and its killer and rumors of the urban legend of the witch, Sarah Fair.
We're all cursed. The witch is real.
She put a curse on Shadyside.
She's been possessing people, turning them into killers to take revenge on the town. It happens in Shadyside over and over.
Bad things happen here.
You can't stop her.
Your best chance is to run from this place.
Hello? Hello?
We started off with 1994, then part 2 went to 78? And then the third part was 1666. Now, before we get started with this full review of all 3 movies, I just want to say that this will be spoilerific. Even though the movies did just release, we are going to talk about it in full to give our best opinions about it. We need to kind of talk about why we like or dislike certain things. So if you have not seen the full set, definitely watch that before listening to our episode. Otherwise, let's have a conversation. Right off the bat, Nate, did you have any hint, any storylines, anything that was given to you before starting 1994?
Not really. I knew that it was supposed to be like a slasher thing, but that was it. I didn't know about any sort of supernatural elements, and this one is not really based on any particular book. It's more so like all of these characters and well, I mean, maybe some of the kids have the same names in the books. I have no idea, but all of the story elements, those are new. They have lots of stories about like someone killing someone, but I had no idea. I think I had neutral expectations. Been waiting for a while, and I didn't know exactly what they were going to do, but I figured it would be fun at the very least to see whatever they did with these books that I really enjoyed when I was growing up. But I would say I wasn't expecting it to be as mature as it was. I don't know why. The kids cuss a lot. They use every word in the book, and I wasn't expecting that because there's not any cussing in the Fear Street books. It's pretty like watered down teen angst. Nobody's doing anything too crazy, and the violence, the gore, it actually was shocking. So I guess it exceeded my expectations. I didn't expect any of that.
Well, for me, I didn't watch one trailer. I stayed away from even poster art. I didn't want to know anything about this.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a reader of these books when I was younger. It's nothing against R.L. Stine. I'm just not a reader, period. So even how these books are even framed for these teens back in the day, I had no idea on its maturity level where it was going to be. I just know that it was going to be a step up from Goosebumps. That's all I knew.
Oh, I will say though, I was familiar with the character of Sarah Fear because that was a trilogy of books where
Okay.
it explained why Shadyside is such a shitty town to live in, why it's basically cursed. So I think they changed some things,
Gotcha.
but that the sort of the wrongly accused moment, I think that was in the books. But I don't remember if she became evil after that, or if I think it was just the town was then tainted because of what was done to her, and she was innocent.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, part one starts in 1994. A circle of teenage friends accidentally encounter the ancient evil responsible for a series of brutal murders that have plagued their town for over 300 years. Welcome to Shadyside. Now, this is directed by Lee Janiak, and I hope I'm saying her last name right. I just want to talk about Lee Janiak for a second. She directed all three films. Looking her up, seeing what her track record is, I am in awe of her because she has a way of featuring horror in a very like tenseful way, but also she's just so good at telling a story on top of
Yeah.
that. Like, there's not this sort of line between we're just going to give you a full-on story, which means it'll go into the thriller category or drama, or we're just going to give you heavy gore and just treat it like a full-on horror movie without substance. Not to say that either can't have a mixture of two, but this is an example of how it can be done with such a balance, in my opinion, that I got from this movie, especially keeping it at a level for teens and young adults to watch.
Yeah.
Now, before Fear Street, she's known for directing the a couple of episodes of the Scream TV series on MTV, and she also did the movie Honeymoon. Now, on our other podcast, we have talked about this movie before, and I personally really enjoy Honeymoon, because regardless of any supernatural elements that's put into these films, the woman knows how to bring it in a very realistic, grounded way, as if this stuff really can happen. And
Yeah.
I didn't know this is the same woman that did Honeymoon. So I'm just praising you right now as an excellent filmmaker. I'm just say that right now
Yeah.
before we move on.
I agree. Great job.
Yeah. All right, so let's just talk about 1994. Now, this opening scene, oh my God. Oh my goodness. Like, this is how you for me, this is what I needed to see to be like, I'm in it the whole way through. This was so 90s. This was so like nostalgic, and there was so
Yeah.
much horror homage in this opening scene. It takes place at a mall, and this girl is closing up her what was that bookstore, Shelton's? Oh my God, I remember this bookstore.
Yeah.
I was like, are you serious right now? They're putting this in there. But also Spencer's, like I'm assuming there are still Spencer's out there somewhere, but they found one and
Somewhere.
recreated this entire store to look exactly how it did back in the day. I was so impressed.
It's a time capsule.
It is very much a time capsule, but I just love how this first kill starts out, and immediately, and I don't know why, but she gets that phone call, and I'm like, is this really going to turn out like Scream? Is she not the lead? Is she, just like, let's just let you know what you're up against, an example of the way people are going to die, and then we get to the real stars. And sure enough,
Yeah.
it was literally like Drew Barrymore's iconic scene in Scream. I couldn't believe how like it was. But I have a question for you, Nate. Do you feel that's a little lazy writing, or is it great that these homages are put into these like time period movies? I mean, they don't necessarily have a responsibility to put these sort of tidbits in to get us all happy and excited, but is there a lack of creativity when you're just sort of copying a certain format or sort of representing a format that's been done?
No, I don't think it's lazy every time. And this specific time, no. I think they knew what they were doing. I think that the director, she knew what she was doing with that slow motion running and the knife. I mean, yeah, it was a great choice. It was a great homage to Scream. And this actress, I can't remember her name right now. I know she's the daughter of Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke, and she's from Stranger Things, so she's a very familiar face now. She's one of those hot up and comers. So I feel like, yes, it was definitely a smart decision, and I don't know, it was fun. Yes, if you grew up in the 90s, then you kind of get excited when you see stuff like this. It's like, oh, they're actually trying to appreciate what we grew up with. So, and it's, it's like these books are from the 90s. It's like, I don't see how they would pass up any of these things.
Well, it's also great that they actually had her working at a library, because it was a great way for them to feature the Fear Street books.
Yes.
Which on the books, they were said to have been written by a Robert Lawrence, which is RL. So I like that they incorporated that without making it super
I didn't
meta.
even notice that.
Yeah, they didn't,
Wow.
for not making it meta. But then also, like, Stephen King books were featured, and just the whole like chase scene and everything I thought was great too. Just, this skull head killer with the cape, very reminiscent of Ghostface's costume.
Yeah.
And yeah, the slow motion stab. But what really, like, I was just like, hell yes, is when she reached up and grabbed his mask off, and I'm like, they just did that in the other one. That is so good. I love that. All of that just made me like, they're really about to embody the 90s right now. And her plea, I cared for her. By the way, we're talking about Heather, who is Maya Hawke.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah. So yes, love the beginning, very great. And yes, it was definitely bloody. And I'm glad that Netflix and the director kind of went there for, because I honestly did not expect the level of violence that we got as well. So I was like, yes, they're really going for it. So I thought it was great. So then we meet our headliners, and we sort of get this little fake out where Dina, played by Kiana Madeira, is sort of like cursing the name Sam, like, and I could tell it was a breakup. But then, Sam, it's a very common name that can be used in both genders. So it did kind of pop in my head a little bit, because we never saw pictures of this person. And it was very sort of subtle, like misdirection of how Sam was talked about. So it was just a hint, a thought that popped in my head. But I will say that when Sam was with the boy, and he grabs her ass, I was like, okay, maybe it is about the boy. But again, it was just the way that they kind of like led to her reveal. I'm like, oh no, this is gonna be a lesbian film, and I love it. I What'd you think of the fake out?
I didn't. I was surprised. They got me. They fooled me. Even though I have a friend named Samantha, we call her Sam, we call her Sammy, but I have an Uncle Sam too. So it's obviously you see where my biases lie, where I think Sam must be a boy, and so they definitely wanted people to be misled, and they were counting on all of us to think that Sam is a man. Fuck the patriarchy.
Right.
It took me a minute for Dina and Sam to grow on me. Not because I don't love a good lesbian love story, but I don't know. There was something about them. And I think this is my thing where I don't always go for the main character anymore. I just don't. But I loved the friends. I loved the little brother who's in the basement on AOL.
AOL.
Just, doing a chat room bit. I couldn't believe it. Hilarious. And I was like, oh, hey, I've seen him in that, whatever that alien movie was on Netflix, End of the World or something.
Oh, yeah. Rim of the World?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, look at him getting work. I appreciated that, the lead, Dina, was not a white girl. Her brother's not white. They are people of color, and so I was like, this was exciting. Yes, they show us Heather, the cutesy white girl in the bookstore in the beginning, but it was a nice departure, because you just don't never see that, especially in the 90s. It was like, how many horror movies can we say were led by a person of color in the 90s at all?
Yeah,
I can't think of any. So it's fun. And then her best friends, they were great. Like poor Kate, and I can't remember his name now.
Simon.
What's his name? Simon. And that was another thing where the kills were sort of spaced out. Like, there was the big death sequence at the beginning where it's like multiple people were actually killed. We just didn't see it. And then, things didn't happen. It was like creepy, but nobody was dying. And then the longer it went on, I thought, oh, no one's going to die. Everyone's going to live.
Yeah.
Maybe it takes away some of the suspense, but that's okay. I like these characters. And then bam, no. The best friends just can't live. I don't ever want to be someone's best friend in a horror situation.
Man, well, if they stayed alive, they'd take the spotlight away from our main characters, who we're supposed to care about more. I mean, that's just kind of how it works, to be honest, because who was I rooting for? Simon and Kate. That's who I was rooting for.
I really was.
I really nothing was. Against our main couple. I'm just saying those two were so much fun. But I also just love the fact of how supportive they were. Like, they were involved. Like, it had nothing to do with them. All they had to do was walk away. And just how much determination that they wanted to help their friend. I just love the both of them. They were just well-rounded characters. I'll go out and say right now, Simon was everything to me in this first part. I liked that he was a little bit, I shouldn't say androgynous, but he sort of bended the gender for me in this episode, just with the painted nails and just the wearing of women's clothes, but feeling very confident in them when he had to kind of dress out of the blood. Also, the body positivity of it all, and not to shade Simon at all. I'm not saying he has a bad looking body, but the fact that it's not chiseled and hairless and all of this stuff. This man had an average figure and he was rocking it like no other. And I love that because there was hardly any other sort of like titillating skin being revealed throughout this movie. I don't know. I sensed a little bit of queerness from him. So I'm not going to put that full on label on him, but that's just kind of how I got it. But again, he was just such a fun character. And I mean, and there was a part, I think, when they were all sort of doing their separate thing before like the big battle. And we got that scene where everyone is sort of like hooking up in a way. And they all come out of their respective places. And he's like, did you two sets of people just bone? And he goes, well, so did I, because he was like touching himself. And I just like that. I just like how open he was about it. I just thought that was clever. But yeah, I like you enjoyed the characters a lot. I love how the little brother was the sort of the historian. He's the one that kind of had all the facts. The scholar, exactly. I enjoyed him, and I'm glad that he was present and not taken for, like this little kid who just wants to hang out with Big Sister. Like, he was very important to this group. But yeah, what I really enjoyed about this first part is that we don't know much about sort of the rules, how the dead works, how the witch works, how this urban legend works. And we're just given these subtle clues that makes it a little bit of a mystery. We had them visit each people's location, and there were different killers, and they were attacking specific people. There is one part in particular that I thought was amazing jump scare. Was they were at the school, and Skullhead comes back, and he, like, Simon, and I think Simon and Kate were keeping a lookout, I think it was, and they didn't really notice that Skullhead was right behind them, and he comes rushing towards them, but instead of taking them out, Skullhead runs past them as if they weren't even there. And that to me made me jump so loud because that's unexpected. I didn't know what to think, him running fast, but then at the very same time I was like, why did he do that? So now they're giving me something to pay attention to and figure out, and I love that element.
Yeah, that was a surprise. I was really confused. I was like, where's he going? Did he not see what? I don't understand.
Yeah. And so we then get the reveal that their specific scent and their main target is the blood of the chosen person who is supposed to die next. And I thought that was super clever. And as I was thinking about loopholes or shenanigan moments, they happened to bring them up. And I think one part was, well, one of them was in my house sniffing through clothes. Why was he there if he was after Sarah the whole time? And then they bring us back to the moment when Dina got blood on her shoes, and I completely forgot about that. And that's just great attention to detail. So I really love this first part. The kills, I will say, man. Now, like you said, Nate, we didn't really get anybody dying. I mean, asshole from Sunnyvale got a, stab through the, the back earlier, but we didn't really get the full, like, sort of like idea of how brutal and gory these kills were going to be. Now, as I was rooting for Kate and Simon throughout this whole thing, when they got a hold of her, I was like, no, she's going to fight through. She's been tough this whole time.
Yeah.
And then, man, that meat grinder, I just did not expect that at all. And I was like,
it a meat grinder or a bread slicer?
One of the two. Yeah.
I think it was a bread slicer. And I was like, this is terrible. Like, thinking about somebody being killed by a bread slicer.
Yeah.
It's not something I'd ever think about.
And that's the other thing too, is that this happened towards the final act. Like, this is the final scene. There's only 4 of them. They didn't really do a slasher count, kill count. Maybe this will just be the only one. And I'm like, okay, they got it out of their system. They just killed Kate. That sucks. And we're watching it, and everything's just like high octane. What is going to happen? Blah, blah, blah. And then Simon, like, I was heartbroken. I couldn't believe it. And the last words was run, go. Like, he still was thinking about Josh. And that's why I was so mad that he died. This actor, by the way, Fred Hetchinger, he was recently seen in The Woman in the Window. Did you watch that on Netflix, Nate? This is with Amy Adams, that woman who can't leave her house, and the neighbors. Okay.
I'm familiar with it, but no, I haven't seen it.
So he plays the neighbor's kid who sort of forms a little friendship with Amy Adams' character. So I had recently just seen him, and he had looked very familiar. So that's the tie-in. That just came out as well. But yeah, I think this was a great, awesome first start. And then it sort of ends with them looking up the sole survivor of the last time that this happened in a big scale. And they call her up, and she's like, look, girl, like, y'all ain't done. You think you solved this? This ain't It Follows. You can't just be electrocuting bitches in a pool. Like, this is far from over. And they go to her house, and they basically force her to tell her what she knows and any clues that she can give them to help their friend who has been possessed. And so that leads us in to part 2, 1978.
Picture it, 1978. I don't know why I always do that, but here we are. So I loved Jillian Jacobs, and all we know is her name is C. Berman. Wait, is that it?
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah. And we don't really know her name. We don't know anything. But then, she sits them down and she tells them a story. And she takes it all the way back to 1978. She's like, this is me and my sister in the picture. And a week later, my sister was dead.
So Shadyside, 1978. School's out for the summer, and the activities at Camp Nightwing are about to begin. But when another Shady Sider is possessed with the urge to kill, the fun in the sun becomes a gruesome fight for survival.
So when we get to camp, I think it's like we jump right in, and it definitely feels like the more like the 80s, because I don't know, camp movies came out in the 80s more so, but we're running through the woods, and even sort of like the coloring that they chose to use, the whatever filter they put on it felt kind of yellowy 70s. So I appreciated that. The music, it was fun. And Sadie Sink, another familiar face from Stranger Things, I thought she did a great job as Ziggy. And I don't know the actress's name who played Cindy.
Emily
Rudd.
Not
sure. Emily Rudd. I don't know if I've seen her in anything, but she was great.
She was phenomenal in this second half. She is known for Dynasty, the TV series that's currently on right now. A lot of other TV series, sort of one-off episodes and whatnot, but most of her career is doing video shorts. So yeah, she's not well known, but Dynasty is probably the biggest project.
I thought they were all great. I mean, they were very appropriately cast. People looked like they were from the 70s for the most part. I will say about this one, maybe I didn't care as much about people, because a lot of the deaths happened pretty fast and off screen, which is fine. I don't need to see people getting axed. But they were introduced and then they were killed. So, and at this point it's like, well, I know people are going to die, since the first one actually was killing bitches. This one I was like, oh yeah, The people are going to be killed by an axe. I was surprised though. It was the campers. It wasn't like the counselors who are, usually older teenagers. They killed some children. I mean, they look like children to
Yes.
me. That was a little shocking.
Yeah, a little bit around sort of the Twitterverse and social circle that I am exposed to. This was the fan favorite of the three. And
Hmm.
this isn't my favorite, but again, I think this is a strong um, middle part to this trilogy because you get the full
Yeah.
blown sort of story as to what this curse is and how it affects people and why we are dealing with it in 1994. And
Yeah.
I I'd have to say that from a sort of like a behind the scenes sort of point of view, this was the film that also really let you know that this is a more mature trilogy that you're getting. There was
Oh,
a lot more
definitely.
nudity, a lot more sexual
Yeah.
scenes, and a lot more cursing. And again, like Nate said, they were killing fucking kids. When that first kid got it, I I was like, oh, they killing kids in this bitch now. I
Yeah. Yeah.
never would have thought they would have gone there, and they killed a lot of children. Like
They did. I mean, I think it was like at least half of the count was mm, campers. They got a few counselors, but I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it was crazy. Well, Cindy being the older sister of Ziggy, Ziggy's sort of like this, I shouldn't say problem child, but she's one that isn't really getting along with a lot of people, and a lot of the girls don't like her. They also think that she is the witch. This camp is well aware of the curse, the idea of a witch possessing people. And Cindy, being the older sister, though, she again is a prime example of how Shady Side is sort of affecting the kids in this town. She's sort of like the poster child of, I'm from this, town that's not really liked. I don't want to represent that. I want to get the hell out. I don't want to be
Hmm.
a part. I want this past behind me. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I think this one had the most scares for me and more sort of shocking parts that I didn't expect. Uh, I was particularly into the younger Nick Good.
Oh yeah.
Nick Good to me, I played by Ted Sutherland. First of all, I'd never seen him. I think he's a beautiful person to look at. I just was so infatuated with him. But I think this was done on purpose. This is like
Yeah.
Ted Bundy. This is like
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of those people that do not look like evil ever to
Hmm.
anyone, and they're so smooth and sweet that that's the last person you expect to
Right.
to do something so heinous. So he ends up in this movie being a total dick. But the whole film, he is this unrenowned hero, somebody who is looking for that moment to like step up, be a hero, get the girl. Everything was set in place for him. And it's just the last thing you expected. I was devastated finding out that he caved, and the fact that he turns into this cop that we already know to be somewhat of a good person in the first one. So we
Yeah.
find out in this that when he was a kid, he was a dick, and that
Mhm.
made me sad because I liked young Nick Good. What'd you think of Nick?
Yeah, I mean, he was, and because it's like, oh, you see him like he grows up to be someone who maybe his hands are tied, where he's like, I'm trying to do the best I can, but um, really, I can't explain all these strange things that happen, so we're just gonna make something up. I will say, I think that this stayed true to the book because it was interesting that his name is Nick Good, and he's not, and then her name is Sarah Fear, and she's innocent. She's not. You don't need to fear her, but they, put all that on her, and That's why it's named Fear Street. But they spelled it differently, and there's this whole legacy of the Fear family being cursed and whatnot. But it was like the Goods are the ones who started all the bullshit. Like they lied, they made something up, but and it's a different story. But I liked it, and I kind of forgot about it though until it happened, until it was like revealed that, oh no, he's not good.
Well,
Evil is good.
that's the thing that I like about this trilogy, because again, it still furthers the story, but without telling you everything. There's still more secrets, there's still more story, there's still more reveal, and they're going backwards. So it's like, what are they going to tell
Right.
me in 1666 that I don't already know now? We're in the present, live in the now, but they still
Yeah.
gave us something that wasn't completely clear in the first one, in the previous. So there's
Yeah.
a point when Nick says something to Ziggy, and he's like, you know, you're not the only one that wants to shed the skin of their sort of familyhood or their
Mhm.
ancestors. Like he gives a little hint that
Yeah. He's like, I don't want to do this. I
exactly.
don't want to be this person.
Yes, like, but I'm into that scary stuff. I'm into that Stephen King, and I'm okay with playing a prank here and there and blah blah blah. So he's not a goody two shoes, but at the same time, it's like he's trying to shed some of his past away too. So knowing what we know now, by the end of the trilogy, he has a legacy to uphold, but he wanted to be that person to step out of it. Like, I'm done, I want to break free of this tradition. But the fact that Ziggy knew too much, he had to follow suit, and he
Yeah.
couldn't shake it off. And I think that his goal was to really just like not, and there, oh my God, the line when he is like, I know that I fucked up and got people killed today. And I thought it was because he's a counselor. He's supposed to be the
Yeah.
protector.
He feels
And
guilty.
he feels guilty. And then he says, but I'm not going to let you die. You're the one that I'm going to save. And it did not click to me at all to be any different than what it sounded like. And I thought that was great. But I wanted to ask you something that could be a little controversy. I love this scene when they're all in the mess hall and they're all sort of like figuring out what to do. And Nick and fellow counselor, they have to go out and, find the rest of the people who are out playing the game. And, he makes this big declaration in front of everyone. He was like, I'm not going to let you die. And I'm like, you just told everybody you are like into this girl. And Home Dude was like, dude, she's a camper. What do you think
Yeah.
about their relationship, the age difference, the authority? Like, what do you think about that? Did that cringe
Well,
you, or did you like it, less like it?
no, because I don't think there was a huge age gap. Like and it's like she was saying, like, oh, it's my last year. So she's probably, I don't know, 14, 15, and he's 16, 17, maybe. I don't know. Because he wasn't like an adult. He wasn't an adult. I knew that. And then, and not to say it's fine, but it's like in the 70s, people didn't really care too much. So like a 3-year age difference, they're both teenagers. I didn't see a problem with it.
Fair. And I didn't either. I don't know what that says about me, but I get it. I don't know. I like you said, they didn't look like they were so much of a huge age gap, but in the fact that he took the job as a counselor knowing that you do not fuck around with campers like that, that's a little weird. But it was just, wow, he just was letting everybody know, like, yeah, I'm fucking around with a camper here. Like, I mean, but I actually did enjoy their chemistry. Do you think
Hmm.
I thought they had good chemistry working together.
Yeah, no, I thought it was believable.
Tommy, I thought, was a great killer, axe murderer. Like, I thought
Yeah.
he was really good with like sort of the deterioration of like his face. He just started to like look real sick and start getting to this evil streak. And just with that first axe kill, like there was a lot of heads chopping off in this one, and tons of blood, axe in your face. You know, gross. But he did
Mhm.
a really, really great job in this. What'd you think of Tommy, the Nightwing killer?
I like Tommy. I didn't. really get too scared for some reason. I think in the first Fear Street, they showed him with the sack over his head, so he's a little more ambiguous, I guess. But once I knew it was him, uh, I never felt too scared most of the time, especially for the way it was shot for me anyway. You know, they always showed him like approaching. There was never like a, and I don't love jump scares either, you know, because they're like manipulative. But you know, he never like jumped into frame or anything. He always was like, you turned around and he was there, and it was, you know, very straightforward.
Gotcha.
But I still liked what they did with him. I mean, it was, you know, sad that this nice person was suddenly out of control and it wasn't him anymore.
Yeah.
Everyone was so surprised. That was the sad part. All these people are like, Tommy? All these little kids, Tommy?
Yeah.
You know, it's someone that you're supposed to trust, someone who's been like taking care of you all summer and like making sure you are having fun and like, eating your meals, and now he's like killing you.
So crazy. Yeah. And just with the first kill with that that guy who dies, you know, the one with the long hair, like he, you know,
Oh yeah, that was
that first, like, it was unexpected, and he's like, dude, come on, like, what are you doing? And then it just happens, and it's just you, there's no going back from that. And just finding out your boyfriend's like that, I just thought all of that breakdown was just messed up. But something that I learned from the director that I want to point out just with Tommy. So Tommy is played by McCabe Sly. And this gentleman, so they actually filmed 1666 first. So, and in that one, he plays Mad Thomas, you know?
right.
Janiak was so impressed by sort of the facial features, sort of the acting in his face, the way that he sort of presented his mad ways in this 1666. They thought that it would just be a great idea. She was inspired by this to have him in the second one, you know, be without the mask for most of his kills. So he actually was supposed to get the mask a lot sooner, because didn't you find it out of place when the mask was finally given to him?
A little. I was like, well, what's the point of this now? Just to connect it to the first movie.
Because it was, yeah, exactly. And I should have known with the jacket that it was him. But honestly, for a while, I completely forgot that was the same axe murderer in the first one. But yeah, at first he was going to get his mask a lot earlier in the film, but she was just so impressed by the way he was acting. Let's just let his face do the work. That's just scary enough. And so, yeah, that sort of prompted a little change into how the second one was going to happen. So I just think that's amazing. My favorite kill in this one had to have been when Cindy took out Tommy with the shovel. I just like, because the whole movie, she kind of had to deal with the fact, like, at some point you are going to have to kill your boyfriend. Can she do it? But also, does she have sort of the courage and strength to do it anyway? Because, you know, she's a little bit of the safer side, you know, the very good final girl that doesn't kill anybody or whatever. But man, this woman was like, why don't you just die? And just kept shoving that shovel until his head popped. I thought that was amazing. Great kill for me.
It's too bad though, because, you know, usually they don't do it. Usually they're scared and they're like, I can't kill someone, I'm not that kind of person. And she actually did it. But
did you have a favorite kill in this one?
I mean, it was probably just the duel at the end with Cindy and Ziggy, only because, you know, it was just so sad that she tried to save her but she couldn't. And I mean, it was brutal. It was really brutal, just that axe hitting her, and it's like she's still alive.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm dead. One hit, my body's just wants to shut down. I don't want to.
She took a lot to the stomach. One death that I did want to bring up, it was the other counselor. Like, so when they were in the cave and they, you know, discover where the witch's tomb is and everything like that, then, you know, it's right under sort of an outhouse in the middle of the camp. And, you know, Ziggy and one of the counselors find them and they use this bucket to bring it down. I got very big Goonie vibes from this, even though, again, this takes place in the 70s. I got a very good Goonies vibe from this. But yeah, when Tommy cut off Home Dude's head and that body fell on top of her, that was messy. Oh, and just her leg, the way
that sucks.
they put that shit on screen and let us see that shit break. Oh my god, that was brutal.
Too much.
But be honest with me. Let's talk about this ending. Now, the C. Berman thing, clearly they didn't want to let us know.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're both getting stabbed at the same time, which I love. This is a very, high octane. It's a moment where it's just like, which one's going to die? And then you're like, why does it matter? We know that Cindy dies. And then, or not Cindy, but we know that, because obviously the adult, C. Berman has the darker hair. So we think it's Cindy, right? We think Cindy grew up and that her sister Ziggy died because Ziggy is the first thing we see when we get to the thing. But now they're giving us this, they're both being stabbed. Why is she getting stabbed? What's going on? And then you think, well, they never did reveal her name. So you get to the thick of it and you find out that Ziggy is the one that lives and Cindy died. And I was confused till the literal end. To the literal end, they were just like, what's this girl's real name? What was it, like Claire or something?
Something like that. Charlene, who knows? But I actually wasn't that surprised. I just felt like, oh, look at them, like calling her Ziggy, but it's like I felt like she was going to be the one, even with the brown hair. I was like, no, she just has darker hair. She's not a redhead anymore as an adult for whatever reason. They're trying to like confuse us, but nah, I knew Cindy wasn't going to make it.
The idea of all of those killers being resurrected was another sort of boost for me in this series and being invested because the stakes are high. And the fact of all of these killers being there all at once, and especially with the montage of seeing them all commit murders through a flashback scene, like that was heavy. Ruby Lane, is that her name? Like man, hearing her voice and her screaming, the way she flicks the switch, like all of that was so good. So good. Then we get to 1666. Now, when Dina brings the hand to the body and she gets all the flashbacks, but then she's sort of like transported into Sarah Fear. What were your first reactions to that? And especially on how they're going to tell this story. Did you have any like idea what popped in your head? I'm curious if you were thinking the same thing I was. Like, what was your thought process on the fact that that happened? And did you like it?
Oh, that like she became Sarah Fear?
Yeah.
Yes, I liked that. I was happy that she still got to be the main character and we experienced the story through her, instead of, some random white girl from 1666. So yeah, I really did appreciate that. And I didn't know exactly what was going to happen with this, but I knew it was going to reveal to us that Sarah Fear is not evil, but some bullshit happened. And, I didn't know if it was going to be like this Elphaba moment where she's like, fuck it, I'm going to be evil then if you think I'm evil, and I'm going to curse the town. But I knew she was not going to be evil in the beginning. I knew she was going to be wrongly accused and all sorts of dumb shit.
Gotcha.
But I was surprised. I sure was.
So I had no idea. And, I believe in witches. So when they say there's a witch, there's a witch. Done deal. Like I'm just going to run with it. So my very first thought was that, like, we had a storyteller for 1978, but how are we going to talk about 1666, right? So this whole teleportation thing, and I'm using that word because I honestly thought that she went back in time and that Dina is conscious of her being in somebody else's body.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case. But that was my first thought when they revealed it in part 2. And I honestly, if they had went that route, I was not really happy with that idea. I was like, please don't let that be it, because that's kind of I don't know. I just didn't really like that's how you're going to take us back in time. Like, I don't know. I just didn't like that. But I'm glad they didn't do it. And it was also a way for, these characters who or actors who have been in the first previous installments to be involved in this third part, because we're just learning. A story is being told, that's it, right? So you get a lot of the actors being recycled to play different parts, but sort of have a little bit of a connection of their characters from the later time, right? So
Yeah.
they're not like all playing their ancestors, but they all are still involved in a sort of way that creates sort of the chemistry and dynamic that their characters have in the future. So
Yes.
the origins of Sarah Fier's curse are finally revealed as history comes full circle on a night that changes the lives of Shady Siders forever. So, Nate, in this one, we find out that Sarah Fier is also a lesbian, or that she's into girls. What did you think about the level of queerness that was in this film? Did you find it like it was too much? Was it good or bad? Overwhelming?
Could you imagine if a gay man was like, "Ugh, it's too much queerness in this movie. How fucking dare they? Ugh, just shoving it in my face." Like all the straightness that gets shoved in my fucking face every time I watch a movie. Shit. Gotta
Well,
root for the straight couple. No.
I wanted to ask that only because, like we have our
Yeah.
couple in the first one, they're not direct descendants. Did they really need it to be, depicted by another lesbian? Like,
I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was great. And then, it's a good connection of like history repeats itself. And I liked it. I thought it was fine. And especially when we think of centuries ago, sometimes we don't always imagine people being on the LGBT scale spectrum.
preach.
know?
I thought that shit like came to life in the 50s or something. Like people don't
Right.
think it went way back,
Even though it's like we have historical documents and things. I mean, usually it's like they talk about like Roman times where men kept. I mean, okay, we don't even get into that.
Yeah.
It's kind of some weird shit. But it's like there's always been homosexuality. There's always been people who were queer. They just didn't have a word for it, maybe, or they didn't have the word that we use. So I liked it. There was definitely some people in colonial times probably getting it in with the same sex. Okay.
Right? And if they weren't, it's because they didn't get caught.
Exactly.
So yeah, I didn't mind the level of queerness in this movie. If anything, this is why gay people love witches so much, is because we are persecuted over the same bullshit, and it's basically just people fear what they don't understand. Everything is sinful and the devil's work if it's not straightforward heterosexuality and no sin at all. Parents can beat their kids, but God forbid let two girls like each other, and it's just hell on earth. So
Right.
I like the fact that it was in there and they were easy targets, to pin everything on them, even though Matt Thomas was a fucking rapist. But,
Right.
we'll move on from that.
Right.
I did enjoy sort of the reveal of what happened in 1666. I know that Nick Good obviously had sort of like a responsibility to keeping this persona of I'm good, I'm leading towards great things, I can't let this girl bring me down from what I'm destined to do, which is be, authority figure and all of that. So he's thinking about his future, but I never once thought that it led back to his ancestry and his family.
Mhm.
Now, like I could tell that because Dina was playing Sarah, that there had to have been some misunderstanding and that Sarah may not be as guilty as portrayed in this movie. But I never once thought it was the good family. Not one time. And I, again, was just hanging out, watching this movie. I didn't think too much about the mystery. I just watched it. And I was actually surprised, one, that it was a dude who did this. Because you think witch, you think witchcraft, men don't really sit down from behind the scenes and do stuff in a sneaky way. They like to brag and be
Yeah.
upfront about their conquest, like they're
Swing their dick all over the place.
exactly. And so to be doing it behind the scenes the way that it was, the fact that a male did, I was shocked. And also because of the relationship between Good and Sarah. So yeah,
Yeah.
last thing I expected, but I thought that was a great twist. You clearly figured that out though earlier.
No. I didn't figure out that it was him, really. I don't think I figured it out. And even now, like, it's funny. I'm thinking about the book and I'm like, maybe I'm getting it mixed up. Maybe they changed it for the movie to be more of a surprise because maybe the girl who was hung in the books was actually like Hannah Good or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the boy who wrongfully accused her was Fear. Um and then that's why it's like the Fear family is cursed and they do all these, they can never get out from under that moment. um but now I'm not sure anymore. It's been a long time since I read those books, but no, I was surprised. I knew she wasn't going to be evil. I just didn't know who was actually evil or who was responsible for turning her into evil, and
Yeah.
wanting to curse the town. Yeah.
Well, they were practically branded as witches right when their secret was revealed. Somebody had caught them making out, and then all of a sudden, once that got out, they are the ones that kind of brought all of this bad luck to the town. They must be witches.
Right.
Let's get them, right? So they declare, well, look, we're already dead as it is. They are never going to change their minds about who we are. We need to take matters in their own hands. And they actually think about, let's get a hold of this book. Let's make a deal because we're already working with the devil anyway.
Yeah.
And so she tries to go for the book. Now, when she gets there, it's missing. And that is because we are given the idea of somebody else is behind all of this stuff. So if she had gotten hold of the book, Nate, what do you think? Do you think she would have went along with making a deal and actually
Kind
putting
of.
a curse on the town?
I think she was desperate at that point. It's like you're backed into a corner and everyone already thinks you're evil. It's like, well, that's what happens to a lot of people. This is what you think of me and I'm out of options. Fine. I'm going to do it. But obviously that didn't happen. She kept her morals, her values. She kept hold of who she actually is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, as especially as the way the movie was portraying this character, she would not have gone through with it. But she definitely was motivated to save, this girl and herself from being hanged. And yeah, again with the reveal and again just with the kill of Solomon, and again more kids dying, their eyes being taken out like heavy. But that pitchfork in the stomach, like even with the sound effects, I thought all of that was super effective. But what really got me was that they showed us how Sarah's hand was cut off, and that shit was disgusting.
That was rough.
That was so rough. But also, it's just hearing her scream. Like they matched her facial expressions and the way that she was screaming in the flashbacks, which did not lead to anything about innocence. And every time that we got flashbacks, that was her telling the truth about what's going on. And it wasn't like, ooh, look at me, this is how you're going to die, and blah, blah, blah. Like all of that was there. It was just seen in a different way. And like all of that, the way that they filmed it, I thought was excellent. So one thing that I did want to bring up, sort of like a continuity that they did. So in 1666, they all went out to party, right? They had their little secret phrase to let everybody know who's going. And once they got to their location, they took blueberries to give them that sort of like I'm on E sort of vibe, right? So in 1994, the pills that Kate was selling to all of the kids, she called them blueberries.
Oh, I didn't even see that. That's so cute.
Yeah. I thought that was great. I thought that was cool little tie-in there. I'm really glad that the entire film was not in 1666 because knowing that this was part 3, I was like, how are they going to end this movie? Because they still have to go back
Right.
to the present. And so far,
Right.
we've gotten a full length of a time frame. So when that story wrapped up and we found out the truth about Sarah Fear, then it was back to 1994, and then it said part 2, and I was like, okay, good. The second half is back to where we started, and now they're gonna wrap this up. And it did feel like a full length movie too, because we got a beginning, middle, and
Yeah.
end with part 2, and battles included, all of that. I thought that was all great. What did you think about the second half of the film?
I loved it, and I really thought, because 1666, that portion was pretty long, so I was like, oh, what is this going to end on a cliffhanger, and they're going to like make 3 more movies to wrap this shit up? What's going to happen? So no, I really liked it. I loved the whole like neon glow in the dark bit, because wow, if you could have seen my bedroom when I was a wee lad.
Oh,
I
I
definitely
had
had a
that
black
bedroom too.
light,
Yeah, I had that bedroom too.
stars, things that just glow. I mean, it's so funny because it's like I would never do that now, but I loved it. Yeah,
Yeah, the second half I thought was a lot of fun. Just the slow reveal of Nick Good, the cop, being bad, and
Mhm.
immediately seeing Dina and be like, oh, this bitch knows I gotta take her out now. And the
Yeah,
shootout, all of that I thought was great. Again, it was just a nice reveal. And then you kind of go back and then you find out, like, oh, yeah, these aren't your spray cans, they're mine. And it was like, haha,
yeah,
jokey, jokey. Yeah, I'll just say they're mine. I'm spraying. But yeah, they were actually his. So the Seraphir sort of like nursery rhyme or poem or whatever that's being
yeah.
spray painted around town, this fool's doing it to keep the urban legend going and making Shadyside just this nasty place to be. And it was this fucker the whole time.
And it's not to get like super deep, but it's funny how it's like it is reflective of reality in the world, because this stuff does happen where, especially like you remember like last year, the different protests, we found out that there were a lot of police officers who were putting on masks and running around damaging property and doing different things, and then blaming it on like Black Lives Matter and different groups that were just angry and yelling and protesting, but they weren't damaging property. People were doing that and blaming them, and he's doing the same thing. So it's like, you're like out here spray painting and misleading the public, but it's like, of course, why would they think it was him? He's doing the best he can.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I'll go a step further. I mean, I could be stretching it, but here's my thing. This curse not only brought good to his family. His brother ends up mayor, he ends up sheriff, but this curse also helps the town. So
Hmm.
Sunnyvale not only becomes rich in a lot of ways, but also protected from a lot of violence and evil doing happening on their side of things. So they're not like invincible, but they definitely have sort of a shield around them as long as they're willing to sacrifice the lower class. And
Yeah.
to me, I feel like you wonder where this 1% gets their money and if it is clean money and what do they do in order to get it. Like all of it is
Right.
apparent in this film. It is. Whether that was the purpose or not, it is clear as day to me.
And I mean, this is redlining. This is like, how it all started. And it's crazy too, because that's how the books are. Like they have Shady Side and Sunnyvale, where it's like, yes, people are very wealthy and affluent. And then Shady Side, I don't know if it's depicted as being like, oh, just like such a dump, but it's like, strange things happen, and it's a little harder for people there. There's a lot of murders. So I think they took it a step further in these movies to be like, yes, this town is fucked, and we don't know why.
Right? Well, the other thing is that once Nick Good dies, the curse is obviously closed, it's lifted. Now Sunnyvale doesn't have its sort of protection that it did this whole time. And what happens right away? Oh my God, yeah. Just a random couple just drives out of their driveway and gets hit by another car. Like, you guys are going to get fucked over just like everybody else in the world, and you are no longer protected. And I was like, wow. Even the town was just like that was crazy.
Property values are just dropping.
Mm-hmm.
People's stocks are crashing. Yep.
Well, it's the other thing too is that let's if we had like a post credit scene, right? Just the idea of them losing their status quo, on how much it would hurt their ego and just their way of life, things that they're used to. Like they would never be able to adjust to change, and
right.
and they would just play victim so much on what's going on. Now, there's no say that the town knew what was going on, but just their life changing all of a sudden would really fuck them up, which which is also a sort of thing that they just take their riches for granted so much, and they just try and hold on to whatever it is they have so much, like they forget that there's so much world out there that's being screwed at the same time. It's so crazy. But another little nugget to kind of give you a little bit of hint about Nick Good. He is the protector of Sunnyvale, and their mascot is the devil.
That's so funny because I didn't remember that part. I remembered like it was the witches, but the Sunnyvale Devils versus the Shadyside Witches.
So crazy. I didn't even really put that together, but everything was sort of represented on this side that he was involved with this curse, and I just think that was great. I loved their last attempt to take out Nick Good, the plan of carrying him, so to speak. And the way that they trapped all of the killers in their respective stores. I thought all of that was great. The when the gate got stuck and that shit was heavy. So I was like, he's just gonna stab you through the grate. Get out! Oh God, all of that was scary as fuck. I was a little pissed though when Ziggy and janitor dude, home dude, was gonna be like, nope, he's on his own, and they were gonna let Josh die. That was fucked up.
That was terrible. Adults? Wow.
Yeah, I know. I was like, y'all better man up and get them adults to be doing that. I was like, y'all better do something. Overall, I thought it wrapped up nicely. I think everybody who deserved to lived through this. And then we get that post-credit scene of somebody grabbing the book.
Lord, yeah. Because they're like, oh, well, if you like this, there's more.
And that was not just a last minute scare or like, haha, it's not over yet. They have plans.
Yeah, I figured.
They do have plans, and bring it.
It's great.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy about it. There is the Humpty Dumpty Killer. Now, there was a newspaper clipping that was revealed that in 1935, the Humpty Dumpty Killer strikes again. And according to the director, the Humpty Dumpty Killer was originally in this movie. He was supposed to be in 1994. But the backstory behind the Humpty Dumpty Killer sort of made it a little bit ambiguous as to which time frame that the killer should be in. It wasn't really quite clear if he fit in the 70s, 90s, or obviously back in the 1600s. Yeah. And so basically this guy was out there killing people, taking their body parts and making new people out of them, and sort of the way of saying Humpty Dumpty put things back together again. So that was what the Humpty Dumpty Killer was going to represent, just making new people by sewing new body parts together. Because she couldn't decide which time period to put them in, she decided to take him out and save him for a future movie. So we are going to get hopefully a full-fledged movie of the Humpty Dumpty Killer. But he sounds interesting, I think.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. overall, what do you think about this trilogy? The way that they were released, the maturity level, everything that we talked about today. Like, are you recommending this to people? Do you want future movies to sort of go by this sort of like outline? Like, what do you think about the Fear Street?
I enjoyed it. I really did. And not to say my expectations were not low, they weren't. But I think I enjoyed it more than I expected to. I thought I was going to watch it, think it's fun, and then move on. But no, I really think they hit the mark. And it was a very well connected trilogy, especially, it's like coming out one each week. I thought that was nice. The way they envisioned it before, where it was going to be like one movie each month released in theaters or something. I thought that this was probably better to not make people wait as long. So, like 1 week, 1 week. But it was a really great story, the way that they connected it and told everything, like we moved backwards and revealed everything slowly. But yeah, I was thoroughly entertained and creeped out. Still surprised by a lot of things, the maturity, the goriness. Yeah. So I if they make more, yeah, I look forward to it.
Very good. Yeah, I definitely look forward to more of these types of films. We got a little bit of a cross between sort of this Goosebumps, Afraid of the Dark-ish stuff mixed in with like the heavy goreness of like Stalker.
Yeah.
And I love both. I love both shows, and I think that this was a great mixture of the two. I mean, these films were rated R, even though they are targeted for teens, but I don't
Mhm.
see anything like heavily not appropriate for them. I mean, to be honest, I think the parents would the only thing that they would take out of this movie is the queer shit. They would leave the gore, they would leave all the kills, the access to the face, but take away that girl on girl action. We don't want that shit in front of our kids. That's the only thing I see them taking
Yeah,
out. Everything
probably.
else I thought was a nice balance.
And the sex from 1978, they might, cringe because sex is bad. Don't look
Yeah.
at it. But
But
look at all the violence.
but you know what's funny though? With that nudity, it was mostly the males. Like the girls necessarily didn't really show chest or anything. It was really just ass from the guys.
Yeah,
And
and it was a nice ass.
yeah, oh yeah, well, we yeah. But yeah, overall, I think these films were a lot of fun. I love the fact that we got the continuation of them a week later. I would actually have been okay with a month later. Like I think these films held their own as a standalone, and enough happened for me to hold on to wait a month. I honestly could have done that. And had this been a series, I'm sure it probably would have worked, but
Mm,
I'm glad that they were movies because it was nice to just kind of just get it out the way and just
yeah,
full force just show us everything they've got and it allowed us to really kind of live in the moment too because I swear to you if I had waited a little longer I probably would have forgotten a few facts.
yeah, yeah.
So because these stories were so well connected it was great that they came out in the time duration that they did. Definitely recommend all of these. I don't think one movie is sort of like a standalone to the others. Like I would never be like watch 1994 but skip 78. Like
Yeah,
yes,
no.
like you get a synopsis and enough to really hold you into seeing one other, but what's one movie without all three? You might as well watch them all.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
one last question for you, just for our listeners who have not seen them yet, if they're listening. If you didn't like the first one, will you like the rest? Should they keep going?
I don't know. I feel like they wouldn't. If you're not into it, the first movie, 1978 might take you out. And I didn't dislike 1978, but it was like a different vibe. It was shifted. Once we got to the third movie, it's like, yes, it's a totally different vibe, but it was like, I'm into this. I like how we're doing the different time periods. But if you don't like the first movie, I don't know if you'll really enjoy the rest of it because it's a long storyline. They're all connected. It could almost be one big movie. So yeah, But I think if you're into horror, 90s nostalgia, you would definitely appreciate these movies. So that's my thought.
Now, just to piggyback off of what Nate said, I would say that even if you thought maybe 1994 didn't do it for you, maybe the characters or maybe the way that the deaths and kills were executed, maybe it's too gross, who knows? But if the story is intriguing, if you're into the story, if you want to know how this curse ends, how are they going to save her friend, watch the rest of them. But if the story you don't like, then yeah, probably this trilogy is not for you. Well, that is going to do it for the Fear Street Part 1 through 3 review. For anybody who has seen it, we'd love to hear from you and let us know any sort of like Easter eggs that we missed or didn't talk about that were sort of in your face. I mean, just the whole shield of the Fear book thing was great, because even homegirl Heather in the beginning did it with one book, and she took a whole bunch and did it herself. But yeah, there are a lot of Easter eggs, I'm sure, that were in this movie. You know, definitely let us know, but also give us your order. What order do you like these movies in? I'm big on 94, so I mean, for me, I think I'm going in order. I think I liked 94, 78, and 66 in that order.
Okay.
I may even one day, if I'm feeling very adventurous with not much going on, I may watch them in chronological order and just see how that plays out. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see that. But yes, I definitely welcome more of these films. All right, Nate, it's time for trivia. Let's answer this episode's question. What is the name of the haunted house in The Haunting 1963?
I'm going to say Hill House. Final answer.
Hill House is correct.
Oh, you know, and for some reason I was like, no, it's not. It's going to be like something else.
But yeah, I always get Hill House and Hell House confused because I until I saw Hell House, I always got them confused. And then there's like the House on Haunted Hill. I didn't know what that was. So this could have been anything because I never saw the 63 version. But yes, I remember The Haunting of Hill House came out, the series. And I remember reading that this is the same house used in The Haunting. So that's how I knew the answer. But did anybody online get this right?
Well, on Instagram, we did have one reply. We had Ryan Hunter Strupa. I hoped I said that correctly. But yes, Radical Retro Rewind. He said Hill House with a question mark, you know, but he got it right. So there you go.
Good for him. It's a Mario on Twitter says, I want to say Hill House, but I also have a history of confusing the haunting of Hill House with the house on Haunted Hill. And maybe the haunting is different again, and it's called something Manor. I'll go with Hill House, though. So he got it right as well. All right, well, that'll do it for trivia. Thank you to Ryan and Mario for answering this episode's trivia question. And of course, on recording day, we'll give you another question on social media to answer. And if you get it right, we'll give you a shout out on the show.
Oh, really?
Kiddies, I guess it's time for our bitch really so that I can get the fuck out of here. But I recently watched Escape Room, the first one, because I wanted to go see the sequel. And I did, and I enjoyed it. However, in the first Escape Room, when there's, you know, about a few people left, they enter a room where they're discovering why they're connected, and they have to hit the heart rate thing. And Jay Ellis's character convinces the other man to allow him to shock him with those paddles to raise his heart rate. and he kills him because he shocks him like 3 times. He kills him trying to get this high heart rate. But then he realizes, oh, maybe they want the lower heart rate. They want to see how low you can go. So he like calms himself down and gets a really low heart rate and opens the door that they need to go through. Bitch, really? I'm not letting you shock me with paddles. I don't care. Like, let's shock you. You're healthy. But he really convinced this man that, yeah, let me shock you. Your life doesn't mean shit, and you know it. So if you die, it's okay. Like, no, you get shocked. You are super healthy and ripped. Like, you'll be fine.
So you're talking about Tyler Lebane's character, right?
I think so, yes.
He's the one that got shocked or agreed to be a guinea pig for Jay Ellis's character.
The truck driver, yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about Tyler Labine. Yeah. So, yeah, for this man to be used as a guinea pig is really fucked up. And, yeah, I think that Jay Ellis's character, he was just so confident in what he was doing. And he just has that sort of like...
I'm gonna survive.
Yeah. He just has this demanding voice, you know, not to say that our truck driver was a pushover, but he obviously didn't have any better plans, right? So he just allowed this to happen, thinking that everybody else knew what they were doing. So yes, he definitely gave his life in the fate of somebody else. And yeah, that was really fucked up. Very, very fucked up.
Yeah.
That is going to do it for our episode. Thank you, everyone who listened all the way through. Again, we'd love to hear your opinion about it. Thank you all. And tell your friends about FearBias, the horror podcast with Nate and Rob. And come back in another 2 weeks with an all-new episode.
We'll catch you later, kitties. On Bitch, I Ain't Scared.